Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about Andrew Jackson, one of the most dynamic presidents and one of the most influential people in our history. He brought a lot to the table, and no one's really sure how to take him, whether to think he was a good president or more of a tyrant. So that's going to be kind of our question that we're going to ask ourselves today. This man, is he a champion or is he King Andrew? A lot of debate on this, so let's get going. Right. So, in the early 19th century, we need to talk about what were some of the more democratic trends. What was happening? What were the people voting on, and what were they doing? So here were some requirements. Okay, you can see in 1800 that a lot of the requirements was all about property. Okay, in most of the states, all you needed to do was have property. In Pennsylvania and Georgia and New Hampshire, you can see that you needed to be a taxpayer. And then in Kentucky and Vermont, the only states that said if you were a white man, no matter what, you can vote, right? And those things changed only 30 years later, okay? So you can see it in the map to the right that everyone pretty much had to be a taxpayer, or if you were a white man, you could vote in the majority of the states. And here is a voter turnout table. So starting in 1824 at the top, only 26.9 million voters came out. Okay, the next year that almost doubled. Okay, by 1840 we have 80 million, 80% actually, people coming out to vote. So why? Well, a lot of turmoil. So let's get it happening. So in 1824. If you were a campaigner, you would go around and you would campaign on the stump, right? You can see Jackson here actually depicting himself on a tree stump, kind of talking to his crowd, making sure that they know everything, and he would do this small town and small town and small town over. It'd be a family affair, right? You can see the dogs here, you can see the kids kind of bored out of their minds, people listening, just kind of hanging out, right? So why is there this huge increase in democratization? Right, well, the white male suffrage increased, and now more people have a say in what's going on in the government. Okay, there's party nominating committees. There's the spoils system, which we'll get into, and there's the rise of third parties. No longer is it just two parties going after your votes. Right, there's more people vying for attention. Okay, and we start to see a lot more than just going town to town. We start seeing parades, rallies, floats. Still no, during this time there's really no negative campaigning towards the other party, really trying to build your name. Okay, the two-party system returns in the 1832 election, which we'll get to. We see the first time the Democratic Party is there. And let's get going with Jackson. Okay, so in 1815, one of the first known paintings we have of him, if you guys can remember, he was a general in the War of New Orleans. So he's kind of a big shot already as a really young guy. Okay, here's a later depiction, right? You see between the two, young, kind of strapping guy, and then kind of older, right? White horse, white hair. So his first presidential run, you guys should have read about this already. Not too sure if you did, but he was the common man's presidential candidate. Okay, we see a lot of overtones and kind of echoing of what Jefferson brought to the table, right? All about the common man, the yeoman farmer. Okay, firm, united, let us be, rallying round our hickory tree, trying to bring back that small town community, being for the man. So in 1824, he had three Republican opponents. Okay, they all ran on the same ticket: Henry Clay, John Quincy Adams, and John C. Calhoun. Okay, you remember two of those guys, pretty well-known war hawks, right? Especially Calhoun and Clay, but he had some stiff competition. So the result of that 1824 election, which many call a corrupt bargain. Okay, so we can see here in the map that Jackson actually wins the majority of the electoral vote. Okay, but look at this little note down here. Because no candidate garnered a majority in the Electoral College, the election was decided in the House of Representatives. Although Clay was eliminated from the running as Speaker of the House, he influenced the final decision in favor of Adams. Okay. Now what happens after this is that Adams appoints Clay as his Secretary of State, and everyone was like, well, wait a second, that's not fair. That's not what's supposed to happen, okay? But as you can see in the percentage here, no one wins a clear 51% majority, so it falls to the House of Representatives. So why does no one like John Quincy Adams? Well, because he's kind of a jerk, right? A lot of people believe he allowed too much political control to be held by elites. All right, very Hamiltonian. Okay, the elites and the educated should be running the country. That's what John Quincy Adams thought. A lot of people objected to his support of a national economic development on constitutional grounds. Okay, so again, very Hamiltonian, just like the Bank of the United States, making sure the government is in control of everything. He wanted a national university, an astronomical observatory, and a naval academy. Okay, yes, good, but still very far-reaching arms of the government. And many Americans saw Adams' vision of a mighty nation led by a strong president as a threat to individual liberties. Okay, and this is very prevalent today. A lot of this stuff happens still. Okay, when we see a lot of government control, the opposing viewpoint is that it's infringing and encroaching on our civil liberties. So, 4 years later, do we need a new president? Yes. All right. We read about this, the Tariff of Abomination, and it's kind of a stemming thing. All right. So it starts in 1816. There's an import on cheap textiles, cotton, wool, things like that. Then there's a tax in 1824 on iron goods and more expensive wool and cotton imports. So now we're taxing imports and wool. Okay. Now we make the cheapest wool in the world. So why are we taxing the imports? Not too sure. Then in 1828, there's a higher tariff on imported raw materials like wool and hemp. Okay, now supported by the Jacksonians to gain votes from farmers in New York, Ohio, Kentucky, the South alone was adamantly against it. Why? Because they make the world's cheapest cotton. It did not need a protective tariff, and that's what these tariffs were all about. Okay, they didn't need it. They already made the world's cheapest cotton, so they were negatively impacted. American textiles and iron goods, or the taxed English goods, became more expensive. And it's sort of this back and forth thing, right? Europe's going to say, all right, you're taxing our goods, we're going to tax your goods. Oh, okay, Europe, well, we're going to tax your goods more. And then Europe, it's just this vicious cycle that keeps going round and round. So, who's voting in the House for Tariff Abomination? It's stupid, right? All of the North are in favor because they're not making anything, right? But all the South here in purple and all the farming states up here, they hate it. They're not in favor for it, okay? Now, there were some problems with Indians, go figure. So he had policies that gave Westerners another reason to dislike him. He attempted to curb speculation for public lands, as in you can go out, you can kind of claim a land, and you can set a price for it. Right? His opponent accused him of denying their individual rights and freedoms to expand westward. It was almost a law that you can't speculate on land unless you got to go through all of this governmental policies. Okay? He supported the land rights of Native Americans against white settlers. Now that's really weird because this whole manifest destiny is percolating in the country. We want to move west. A lot of our eastern cities are getting overcrowded. In 1825, government officials negotiated a treaty with a group of Creek Indians to cede their land rights to Georgia, okay, giving Native American lands to white settlers, okay. The Creek Indians appealed to Adams to renounce the treaty, and Congress sided with the governor of Georgia. Big surprise there. We didn't side with the Indians. So, what's going on here? In the 1828 election, Jackson campaign, engineered by Senator Martin Van Buren of New York, brilliant man, wanted to recreate the old Jeffersonian coalition of farmers and artisans, southern slave owners, farmers with small landholding, right? That yeoman farmer, small town sort of feel. And this is where the Democratic Party begins. Okay, the modern day Democratic Party begins with Jefferson's old party. They created a national committee that oversaw local and state party units. There's mass meetings, parades, picnics, the whole shebang. There's a lot of political mudslinging on both sides. So now we start to see, Adams is elitist, he doesn't care for command, and Adams come back saying, that guy's for the poor guy, why would you ever vote for him? Okay. But it didn't work. Jackson wins a clear majority, 56% of the vote to 44. So we have a new president. Right? And here's where it didn't die. This is a real cool chart. So in the territories here, right, where all population comes in, this is the Senate in 1790. Okay, you can see right there. 1790, the center of population of all of America is right there. Alright, kind of on the other side of Baltimore. Only 50 years later, the center of the population moves. So it's not to say this is where everyone's living, but where everyone is living in this territory, the dead center of it is right there. Okay, you can see it just keeps moving westward. This is a clear data that says the
country moving west since the 1870s and our population is this. So, the New Jackson Village, entering the South, people on the frontier, artisans, heating factory, which they helped and coils them that you read out, and immigrant in the cities, right? Now look at this where, that's it. Alright, so, we'll go up since far that he had of comments, maybe he's not really a kid, however, for a book, or even about that, he has some extreme points to make this commenting is kind of blame on him, or his actual okay? So that's around, you judge it pretty awesome. Dominate the claiming is trying, isn't it? With its fatal and he deserves to go for the will. And so, isn't just one, and he's for it always trying to know.